Good morning, all of you, and thank you for being here on the 12th GRC Summit. I have the privilege and I'm very excited to introduce three extremely talented and experienced individuals. And the good part is that all of them represent three diverse industries, and we get to hear their perspective about navigating risk on the horizon and what's next on GRC. So I wanted to introduce Michael. Michael is the Global Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer at JBS Foods. And prior to being named as for this position, Michael was the head of ethics and compliance for Pilgrim's Pride. And for almost 25 years prior to joining Pilgrim's, Michael represented indefinite companies and individual executives and public officials in federal and state criminal, civil and regulatory investigations and trials. In addition to private practice, Michael also served as a federal prosecutor in the Justice Department's Criminal Division Fraud Section, where he prosecuted a variety of white-collar crimes with a primary focus on corporate fraud. Michael graduated from the University of Rochester and Georgetown University Law Center. He and his wife Julie have 3 children, and his favorite hobbies are running, reading, and anything sports related. Welcome, Michael, to the show.
Thank you very much.
I also have Tolu. Tolu is Chief of Financial Controls and Operational Risk at Inter-American Development Bank. Tolu currently leads as the Chief of Financial Control and Operational Risk Management at Inter-American Development Bank. She oversees the bank's operational risk profile and ensures robust internal control over financial reporting. Her 20-plus tenure in financial services is marked by her expertise in crafting and executing operational risk management frameworks and standards, fostering a strong risk culture, and guiding sound operational risk decisions. Tolu's prior experience includes pivotal roles in corporate operational risk at JPMorgan Chase and risk and compliance at Bank of America. He holds an MBA from University of Virginia, Darden School of Business, and a BA in economics from Rutgers University. Thank you so much, Tolu, and welcome to the summit. And we have the final Prabha Thomas. Prabha is the Chief Risk and Compliance Officer at Tata Consultancy Services. And Tata Consultancy Services is one of the largest employers in India. They have about 600,000 employees spread across probably about 150 countries. And Prabha she heads the enterprise risk and compliance function globally in the capacity. She is responsible for designing and implementing ERM framework for TCS and its risk governance oversight over business units, geographies, and functions. She is also responsible for oversight over regulatory compliance in all aspects of the business. Prior to this, she has managed a large IT programs for global banks and financial institutions and global enterprise initiatives in TCS. She has a rich experience covering program management, large account management, multi-vendor governance, enterprise quality management, business process, governance, risk and compliance, and in her career spanning over 30 years in TCS. She has a Bachelor of Technology in Computer Science and Engineering and an MBA in Financial Systems. She is on the board of directors of C-Edge Technologies, which is a joint venture of TCS and SBI, and is a member of Strategic Advisory Board of IRM in India. She lives in Mumbai, in India, with her family. Welcome, Prabha. Great to have you here. So, I have about questions more related to navigating the risk. But while answering, I also recommend each of the speakers to introduce their organization, because it's good to understand the context from where they're coming from, so that they can answer the question. So let me ask the first question on prioritizing the unforeseen. You've heard Gaurav talking about the emerging risk, increasing regulations, and how the business landscape and the GRC landscape is changing. So with the pace of technology change and geopolitical shifts, supply chain disruptions, and climate changes, how can organizations effectively identify and prioritize emerging risk and compliance issues that haven't even materialized yet? So I'll start with Mike. If you can just start with that, Mike.
So I think the unknown is what keeps me up at night. People say, what's your greatest challenges? And it's not what I don't know. And I've always told people, I can deal with whatever the bad facts may be much better than I can deal with surprises or the unknown. And unfortunately, those who think that any one of us will have a crystal ball and be able to tell you what risks you're going to face tomorrow or 6 months from now, you're going to be disappointed. But I think the way to think about the unforeseen risks is, are they really unforeseen? Just because it doesn't affect your particular company, or maybe even not your industry, the risks are out there. And I think what we need to do is be attentive to, while it may not be at our doorstep, it's out there somewhere in the regulatory or enforcement or compliance world. I think too many of us, look, the lessons that I'm about to share are ones I learned through just mistakes. I think a lot of us tend to focus on the pile of to-dos on our desk. This needs to get sent to management. This presentation needs to be made. But what do we ever really sit there and think, without pen and paper in front of us, what's on the horizon, and really put our brain power behind it? And I think the way to approach these quote unforeseen risks is you have to just listen and do a lot of reading and a lot of studying. There is literature out there. I read every day. The first thing I do, Law 360, because very often people who are experts in various issues that we may confront talk about what's on the horizon. The other thing that I think is very good to kind of get ahead of unforeseen risks is read what the regulators are putting out there. Read speeches from DOJ's leadership or SEC's leadership. Lisa Monaco, who's the Deputy Attorney General, she speaks every year at the ABA White Collar Conference. And every year she lays out what are the Department of Justice's 3 or 4 top priorities. This year it was AI, cybersecurity, export controls. 2 years ago she gave a speech which said export and sanctions are going to be the new FCPA. Now if you're paying really careful attention, and you know what the FCPA has brought upon companies over the past 10 to 15 years, you should start to go back to your own office and you may not have an export problem today, but you may have one tomorrow. And the DOJ is telling you these are the things you should look for. Talk to your peers about what they see, in your industry. What did they see? What problems did they confront? Talk to your own leadership. Now again, the risk, I think, with your own leadership is leaders may not necessarily see your, look, none of us see our own shortcomings. My wife tells me that all the time. I don't recognize my own shortcomings. And I think business leaders in your own company may not see their own risk, but you certainly have to involve them in what they see and what keeps them up at night. But please, I would advise everyone to go outside and ask peers in your industry, colleagues, friends of yours who worked with 15 years old, what do they see? I find communication to be the way to kind of make what we would typically call unforeseen risks actually real and know that, you know what, we may confront that as well. Biggest lesson to take away, read. Read what's out there. Read what the people who come after you, the Department of Justice, the SEC, the CFTC, the FTC, see what they're saying, and that's what's going to try to prevent some of these unknown risks.
Rebecca, we get to your views as well.
Yeah, I think I've made a lot of very, very valid points. To add to that, I would say that it's very difficult to look for the unforeseen if you look inside the company, because then you would see a lot of operational risks which are all here and now. So one of the things that is probably a good practice, which we also do, is to do a horizon scanning to look at research reports, look at surveys, look at what regulators say, like you said, and look at what are the things out there. It could even be like, for example, you have the World Economic Forum risk report, right? Next 10 years. Sometimes when you look at it, you would say, well, many of these may not seem very relevant to me now, but it's worth spending time on it, right? Or there are a lot of risk research forums. There are, the CEO surveys. There are what worries the business from a longer-term perspective. And I think looking cross-industry is an excellent thing to do. One of the things we do, I'm based in India. We've actually in India built a strong network of CROs across industries. So it started very informally, but it's kind of got into a good movement, and the connection with your peers in other industries, I think, gives us a lot of input to think differently and to look at something maybe in some other industries seen, but how does that play out, or would that actually be something maybe relevant to your industry in a different context? I think these are the kind of things which lead you to think. The other thing also is sometimes the boards ask questions. I think this is important. Sometimes it's very, it seems very high level, that I think it's important to dig deeper into the conversations that sometimes happens at the board, which your CXOs, CEO and CXOs will know, and then look at what's 5 years down the line, what could your company look like 5 years down the line. The one more thing I think is many of the risks which are here and now and which we see right now can actually lead to many secondary risks. So I think primary risk, which is here and now, and I know, okay, there's a geopolitical issue in this region, okay, there's a war, so there are immediate set of things that happen, which you can see, but a lot of secondary risks that can come out of it. And I think whether it's COVID, whether it's a geopolitical issue, whether it's a compliance matter, it's good to spend time to look at secondary risks because sometimes they are not very obvious and they may play out down the line. I think these kind of examples would do. And I think as a GRC professionals, there are a lot of methods. Look, it may help, of course, I think communication and connection is the best thing to do, but there are methods one could, use like a SWOT analysis or PESCO. Those are kind of things which can maybe help in putting some structure to the thinking. But those are things that one could try as well.
That's great. Totally, if you could also provide your opinions on that.
Sure thing. I think on the regulatory piece, one can't emphasize that enough. What I would say is, know the regulators, they're the first movers. Some regulators tend to come in later than the others, so once you know, for instance, the EU tends to move faster if you're looking at regulations coming across the globe. If they have a white paper, if they're investigating something, they're going to come before perhaps the US regulators, so knowing the first movers in the regulatory side. I think in addition to that, following up on the operational risk losses, so there's some organizations that will experience a loss due to an event that you might never have thought about. And we've done this. Some of my previous organizations, we find out one of the banks has a loss, a certain issue, and we quickly check within our processes and we see that this is a possibility, we have a vulnerability, and that could be an emergent area for us in the next few years, and we address it immediately. And then I'll give one anecdote. During the dot-com boom, there was an IT company that had a fantastic model. Apparently, the model was renowned, and it could forecast sales and things of that sort. And they depended heavily on this model. But apparently, everything else outside was telling them something opposite to the model. And I remember reading an article that said, all they had to do was step outside and they would know it's raining. Sometimes, regardless of all the processes you have inside, really all you have to do is step outside to see what's coming up in the next year. We all know climate change is coming. We all know a few things that are happening, even if the models don't show it in particular, even if the processes you have, if you're looking at risks that are on the horizon 6 months from now, something is coming up in 12 months, don't ignore it. So I think that's all I'll add to that, yeah.
And I think it also leads into the next question in terms of breaking down the silos. While, organizations have different ways to understand the unforeseen risk, one of the biggest challenges that everybody faces is the silos. And silos exist in various different ways. It could be within function, it could be across functions as well. So, especially on risk and compliance, it often requires a collaboration across the departments, right? With this risk compliance, audit, third party, or cyber. How can organizations foster a culture of communication and collaboration to ensure that everyone is working towards a unified, GRC strategy? So maybe Tolu, if you could start from your side.
Sure thing. So I think first, let me introduce my organization. I'm called my bank. We are a mission-driven bank. Yes, I said bank. We're fully devoted to improving lives in Latin America and the Caribbean. And we're the partner of choice for the governments for long-term financing, or knowledge-based, knowledge-based focus on social issues, institutional issues, and economic issues. To that effect, in terms of breaking silos, it's all about coffee, right? So I always tell people when you're starting off in risk management, there's the technical pieces. A lot of us know how to do the key and emerging risk research, the risk and control assessments, the SWOT analysis, all of that. But once you're beyond that, it's 90% influencing. And you influence better when people like you. It's very simple. And so my team knows, I always say, hey, make sure you have so much time for coffee on the calendar. I have coffee with people across the departments. I have coffee with sister organizations, so to speak. I'm going to be having coffee with these folks on the stage in the future. But this is how you really get to know what's going on, and people get to know who you are, and they're more likely to have that communication. Furthermore, when it comes to risk reporting, we're so used to sharing the doom and gloom, but we also share the good news. So if you are really good under control, you've built something new, not just fixing action plans, of course we give updates on that, but if you've done something really impressive with how you manage risk in the first time, we're inviting you into the committees to speak about it. And so people are eager to say, hey, check this out, we did X, Y, Z, or we're reorganizing how we address certain risks and things of that sort. So we end up not just being doom and gloom, it's also about the good news. People are eager to partner with us and share more. But this good news, it's going in both directions. So we receive good news, but we also share good news with the board. It's not all about all the things going wrong in the organization. We're also telling them what's going on well.
And you might be, could also...
I agree with everything Tolu just said, and I think the key is, and again, these were lessons that I learned the hard way. So as you heard when Manu did the introductions, I did not come to my position as a typical compliance officer. I had been a criminal defense attorney for most of my career and a federal prosecutor. And I mistakenly, in the first several months when I joined Pilgrims and JVS, portrayed that I was still a federal prosecutor or a criminal defense attorney. And one of the things that I learned, the lesson that I learned was, what you have to do is you have to educate, you can't dictate. You have to become a partner in the business, and or as a compliance person, you will fail miserably. You're not going to come in and change that. You've got to adapt to the culture you're in, and you have to understand that the business is going to dictate ultimately what occurs, and you have to work with them and partner with them to build the trust. And you do that the way you build trust with anyone. You sit down with them. When I first joined the company, I met with 40 of the most senior people in headquarters, so I could share with them that I was there to help them. But again, I don't think they had. I didn't have the right view of how to approach that. I still came in almost illicit, but then tell them how I felt things should be done. That's just not going to work. You have to become a partner with the business to really understand what drives them. Like you do with anything. At the end of the day, what we do as compliance professionals, it's still a people business. You have to understand what motivates them. You can't. I don't have the power to subpoena or the chief compliance officer. I do with the prosecutor. That's a big stick to hold. So I think that's it. You have stakeholder buy-in. You have to share with the leadership why compliance matters, why ethics matters, and ultimately how it's going to benefit the business. And there's plenty of scientific studies out there that show that companies that act ethically, that comply with the laws, actually are more successful. And the reason they are, in part, is because they can spend their resources on the business instead of defending lawsuits, defending indictments, defending investigations, paying monitors, things like that. So it's really a matter of, I think, becoming a partner to the business and getting the stakeholder buy-in, and not just the buy-in, but their participation. The voice of business matters more than the voice of compliance and legal. I can say the exact same things as our CEO does. The exact same words talk to the exact same audience. They will listen more to the CEO than they will me. So you've got to get the business people, the senior business people, to buy in to the importance of this. We find it funny, it's funny now, not so funny then, but about 2 months into my time there, and I went into the company, by the way, it's a Midwestern company based north of Denver. I went in the first 2 months dressed much like I am today, but I also had a tie on. And some senior person pulled me aside and said, everything you're doing is fine, but you do realize everybody is calling FBI Mike. and I didn't realize it. I had come from a world where you wore a suit and tie every day, clients expected it. So over time, I lost the tie, I lost the blaze. Now I go into jeans, cowboy boots, and quarter zip in those days. But again, it's part of just understanding the audience, because you need business to be able to support what you do, not so much the other way around.
And Prabha, I think, considering that you lead both risk and compliance teams, obviously you'll have a
Yeah, I think I just love what you said about being a partner to the business. That's exactly what we need to be because I think whether it's a risk team or compliance or the audit team, any of the GRC functions, if they see you as a policeman and you know they don't like to see you, then we've lost the game, right? So people need to come to you for help. So it really assures us when somebody from the business comes to us and say, look, I have this, big program we are working on or a deal, and we think, there are these risks. Can you help me put a solution that will put together a model that will help us to address it? So they actually come to you to look for a solution, look for some ways to handle the risk. So that tells you that they value what we can bring to the table for their own business, right? One of the things in my organization, because we're a very large company, we operate in more than 55 countries, we have 600,000 people, and for example, compliance is embedded in the functions, so I have HR, finance, the admin, data privacy, the health and safety, and so on, IP, and so on, credit control, and so on. So one of the things that we have done, and I think it also works because the culture of the company enables that, is to use the concept of committees and councils to really break down the silo, right? So if I take an example of the regulatory compliance space, I have a compliance working group, we call it, which we meet every month, which is basically the compliance heads of all the functions, right? So I have the compliance head of HR, the finance, the admin, the data privacy, legal. The legal is also there, representative from legal. And so all of us, some 10, 12 of us, meet every month. And the reason is, many of the issues today and the risks today are really cross-functional. There are very few things which except maybe some procedural things which can be done in a department. But many of the technology aspects are so cross-functional that we all have to work together on it. We need to understand the impact of one on the other and so on. And then at the apex level, the management level, I have a compliance committee, which is essentially the CFO, the CHRO, the COO, the general counsel, me as the CCO, and the company secretary. So we have a management council which meets once a quarter, and we spend 2 hours completely looking at regulatory compliance, what's coming, a year down, or are there issues which we need to, and take decisions on matters which impact the company. Again, all the CXOs are there. These kind of things actually work very well for us. Similarly, in other areas also, we have the concept of councils where we bring leaders from cross functions or even regional development. We've tried to do that also in every region. So in North America, I have a committee, the North America Risk and Compliance Committee. So all the leaders in North America, the key decision makers, come together once a quarter, and there's very focused direction on what's coming out there, what do we need to do, and decisions get taken as well in those. And this is done quite formally. So of course, these are not easy. It doesn't happen on day one, but I think the fact that leaders are able to see that there are risks on the horizon, which need not just one person to take a decision, but collective decisions make this happen. So we are able to, it's been working for us. So I think this kind of collaborative decision making and connection is helping a lot in the GRC.
It is. Well, one challenging part, I think, and we both use the words partner with the business. One challenging part of this is, at the end of the day, we are still, as compliance officers, expected to be independent. So being a partner to the business, you always have to be careful. Now, thankfully, I have to encounter this, but being complicit in what might be business wrongdoing. When I was in the Justice Department, I came very, very close to indicting a general counsel who just didn't understand that his job at some point was to say no. He was essentially an unindicted co-conspirator because he didn't have the fortitude to say no. It was clearly criminal conduct. So there is a balance becoming a partner who can help the business as opposed to being a facilitator in raw build. And I think compliance officers now are in a very difficult position. Companies, the DOJ, the SEC, they're looking at compliance officers to be that kind of stopgap against misconduct. So we just have to be very careful in making sure we're clear on what our delineations are on that. I don't know if either of you not encountered it, but have share those same concerns.
Yeah, I think for us, certainly, we have the formal part of business and the formal part of business. So coffee, obviously, is where you build the relationships and you enable the business and you enable the culture, right? So people can speak with you and so on and so forth. But our formal processes are very formal, right? We say trust but verify. That's a phrase you're going to hear from us often and often. And I think what's important is that those formal processes are well buttoned up and repeatable processes. Everyone's aware of it. I think once you have those things set, you tend to still check the boxes and make sure that the lines of defense are well delineated. But again, I think what you said is very important in terms of the balance. But informal processes definitely enable the formal processes.
That's great. Great.
If I may just add one more point. See, of late we are seeing risk as a enabler, as a way to address many of the issues or the upcoming matters in the industry. And whether it is ESG, like yesterday I think someone talked about the alphabet soup, right? GRC, ERM, ESG, RegTech. So this is coming all over the place. So one of the things we are looking at is you take something and if it has risk assessments, for example, as part of that framework, like in ESG or human rights regulations which are coming, they talk about risk assessments. Supply chain, risk assessments. So how do we bring risk and ERM as a commonality across all these things and not have everybody start their own program on risk within the scope of what they're looking at. So I think the breaking down side is also important from a risk angle to look at all these things and bring it together, which should be much more optimal and efficient.
And thanks so much. I think, like Gaurav has mentioned, there is no conversation there without an AI today. So I also wanted to ask a question about that. That how do you see, in the age of big data, AI, automation, what can actually GRC professionals do in terms of leveraging all of these technologies to, rather than spending time on data gathering, but analyzing and using it effectively for their decision-making process? Yes, Prabha, if you could start with that one.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. We like to say that, maybe because I'm from a technology and IT business company, that every business today is a technology business. And technology is actually an enabler for solving, I think, all the business problems today. So whether things are good or things are bad, you need technology. So one of the main things is also over the last 10 years, the other very big thing that has come up is the whole aspect around data. I think you all know the very oft-used term of data is the new oil. And it's true in a business context because the kind of proliferation of digitization, automation that's happening for all businesses, you have this huge amount of data which you have. And most people do not know what to do with it and the stories it can tell. So I think a lot of investment into the basic building blocks, right, of whether it is data management, data maturity, cloud, all these things, and digitization, of course, are very critical so that you can look at the next level of how do we leverage it for GRC. Analytics is obviously a very, very critical area for GRC professionals. So you really need to look at your organization have a strategy for that, right? And maybe not just in particular departments, but so that you can do cross-functional and cross-business process analytics. So if you have that kind of a base, which is, let's say it would be like investing in data lakes and so on, and then you would build on it and have analytics platforms and automation and so on. Another, I think, important area which which can really help in the area of risk, is looking at the technology around digital twins. I don't know if some of you do that in your organizations, but digital twin is essentially something that will replicate a physical aspect of business, and then you actually it's a great tool to look at predictions, risk predictions, and what you can do without actually investing in a material and physical model. In fact, if I look back at COVID, we used what we did sitting after wave 2. We said, well, wave 3 is going to come. We have no idea what it's going to look like. We have a strategy in the company. So we actually built a digital twin. We actually built a digital twin for our organization to look at to decide what should our strategy be when the third wave hits. And we were pretty close. In fact, TCS even did a digital twin for one of the cities in India. And the city council was using it to decide which roads to open, which roads to close, things like that. So if you and you can do this in any industry, right? Whether it's healthcare, whether it's in banking and so on. So that's another technology. Automation is very important. I think we really have to move to preventive methods than detection. Detection is important, but what can we prevent, and what can we prevent at scale through automation? And you can't put big armies of people to really sit and do control monitoring and so on. So moving to automated continuous control monitoring, all aspects of risk, I think, is very critical. The fact with the technology is, as more and more you depend on technology, your risk on cyber, privacy, data, and AI, and all will obviously increase. So as you move into the AI space, I think Gaurav spoke about it. Having responsible AI framework is very important, and governance over it. I think it's still early days. Everybody's figuring out what to do, but investing in that makes a lot of sense, because I think we're going to see every 2 months things are changing, frankly. By the time you figure out what to do, technology is leapfrogged again, and we're like having completely new things every 2 months. We used to say every 5 years earlier. Now it's like every 3 months. So it's a catch-up. Regulators are trying to catch up as well. And with all the laws coming in to regulate AI, in my own company, I think we see something like, we get at least 14, 15 alerts every week from somewhere or the other, from China, Belgium, Saudi Arabia, US. It's just coming all over the place. So I think investing in managing that is very, very important, because anything that we are going to do will need to obviously meet the regulators' requirements as well. So get the base right on technology, I would say, because only then you can build on it. Right? But lastly, I would also say that when we hit some surprise or a crisis, I think organizational agility as a culture is very important, because only then as an organization you can